Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a battle that completely rewrote the rules of war, turning our cities from strategic prizes into the very battlegrounds themselves. Okay, let's dive right in with this quote from military historian Louis Dumarco. This one sentence just absolutely nails a terrifying shift in how we fight. It's the shift from open fields to shattered cityscapes.
So to really get a handle on this, you've got to understand how fighting in cities used to work. Because for most of history, it was a totally different ballgame. You know, for centuries, urban warfare meant attacking fortress walls, kind of like what you see here on the left. The goal was simple: breach one massive line of defense. But by World War II, something had changed completely, creating the kind of total devastation you see on the right.
So here's the absolute game changer. The focus of the battle shifted from breaking down one defensive line to fighting your way through a three-dimensional labyrinth. In modern city fighting, every building, every street, every pile of rubble, it becomes its own fortress. The city is the wall. And you know what? There is no battle that shows this new, brutal reality better, or more tragically, than the fight for Stalingrad.
For Hitler, this wasn't just about strategy. No, this was personal. Capturing Stalingrad became an absolute obsession. It had the name of his arch-nemesis, and that obsession led him to ignore all the sound military advice to pull back when the attack got bogged down. He demanded his army take the city, no matter the cost.
And that obsession, it led to this just catastrophic decision that, with a brutal twist of irony, actually handed his enemy the perfect weapon. So the idea was, hey, let's just crush their will to fight before our guys even set foot in the city. So the German Luftwaffe just unleashed everything they had, dropping thousands and thousands of tons of explosives on Stalingrad.
And this, right here, this is the great paradox of Stalingrad. By leveling the city, they didn't break the defense, they built it.
All that rubble, that twisted steel, those skeletons of buildings, they basically became a ready-made maze of bunkers, tunnels, and sniper nests. This was the perfect terrain for the brutal house-to-house fighting that the Soviets called Rattenkrieg, the Rat War. And that meant fighting not just street to street, but room to room, floor to floor, through sewers and basements with whatever you had: grenades, submachine guns, even sharpened shovels.
So just when things couldn't get worse for the Germans, the Soviets launched this massive counterattack. They encircled the entire German Sixth Army, trapping almost 300,000 men. The situation is desperate. And in this moment of crisis, Hitler turns to his Air Force chief, Hermann Göring, who makes a promise that seals their fate.
It was a boast born of pure arrogance, and it had zero connection to reality. Göring assures Hitler, yeah, no comment, we got this. And then, get this, he promptly leaves on his command train for a shopping spree in Paris. Seriously. So what did the army actually need versus what did they get?
Okay, just look at these numbers. This tells you everything you need to know about the scale of this disaster. The Sixth Army needed a bare minimum of 500 tons of supplies, food, fuel, ammo, every single day, just to hold the line. And what did they get? On average, a measly 117 tons. That's not a shortfall, you know, that's a death sentence being delivered from the sky.
And this was the price they paid for that arrogant promise: 431. That's how many German transport planes and bombers were just gone, shot out of the sky or lost to that brutal Russian winter. It was a blow the Luftwaffe would barely recover from. And for the men on the ground, it meant the last flicker of hope was out. The promise was broken.
So yeah, starved, frozen, out of ammunition, the fate of the German Sixth Army was sealed. And you have to remember, this was the first time the German war machine, this thing that seemed absolutely invincible, had been so completely and so publicly smashed. The shock was felt all the way back in Berlin.
And behind all the big strategy and the numbers, there's this incredibly human cost. This is from a soldier's letter. He's not dreaming of victory. He's not even dreaming of going home. He's dreaming of cakes. Just cakes. That tells you everything.
The shockwave from this defeat, it just ripped through Germany. It created these first real cracks in the whole Nazi myth. I mean, look at this. Hitler himself basically goes into hiding. He stops giving public speeches. For the first time, jokes making fun of the regime started spreading like wildfire. People even stopped using the mandatory Heil Hitler greeting. The myth of German invincibility was just shattered.
But here's the thing. The story of Stalingrad doesn't end in 1943. Not even close. It basically became this dark blueprint for the future of war in cities. Those brutal lessons from concrete hell would echo for decades, relearned at a terrible cost by new armies and new cities.
So let's jump forward to Hue in Vietnam, 1968. It's almost like a carbon copy. You've got U.S. forces, right? They're trained for the jungle, and suddenly they're thrown into this urban maze against a dug-in enemy, just like the Germans in Stalingrad. They had to relearn the awful lessons of house-to-house fighting, and they paid a staggering human price for it.
And then you've got a place like Northern Ireland. This showed a totally different side of concrete hell. This wasn't one big epic battle. No, this was a long, slow burn, a grinding war, where the city wasn't just a battlefield. It was this complex web of communities where any street corner could be a front line, and it demanded a completely new kind of soldiering.
And even today, in places like Jenin, we're still grappling with the exact same problem the Germans had in Stalingrad. You have this massive tank, all this firepower, but how do you actually use it in these tight, narrow streets? That heavy armor is a sitting duck, and its firepower can cause so much destruction you alienate the very people you're trying to win over. It's a deadly puzzle that armies are still trying to figure out.
So Stalingrad really was the turning point. It proved that in our modern world, the city isn't just where the battle happens. The city is the battle. It changed warfare forever. And as more and more of us live in giant cities, it leaves us with this really critical and honestly pretty unsettling question for our future.